Okay, part 3, the third and final part of the 2022 convention of the Guilford County Republican Party. Hopefully I can wrap this thing up, this nearly 3-hour convention that we have. That's definitely a personal record, I think, for Guilford County. But actually there was a convention that went 4 hours and 20 minutes. That was last year in Craven County. I might have mentioned that before. But anyway, getting back into the resolutions. The second resolution, drum roll, is on the issue of should primary elections be open to everyone, or should they be closed to registered Republicans? So when open I mean is that, you know, if you're a Democrat, you're going to pull a Democrat ballot. But if you're unaffiliated voters, should those voters be able to vote in a Republican primary or Democratic primary? Right now, currently in North Carolina, we have open primaries. So that means, of course, Republicans will vote on a Republican ballot for the Republican candidates in that primary. The Democrats will vote on a Democrat ballot for Democrat candidates. Okay, but unaffiliateds in North Carolina, you can actually pick. You can pick a unaffiliated ballot. You can pick a Republican ballot, or you can pick a Democrat ballot. And I will say personally, I've always been against open primaries. The biggest reason is that when I was first getting into the political process, my first primary election that I wanted to vote in was the 2008 Republican presidential primary. I wanted to vote for Mike Huckabee. But I was in Florida. Florida is one of 14 states that are closed primaries. Only Republicans can vote in a Republican primary. Only Democrats can vote in Democrat primary. I had already missed the deadline to be able to... I was an unaffiliated voter in 2008, I should say. And I had already missed the deadline to re-register as a Republican to vote in the Republican primary in 2008. Now, when I moved to North Carolina, about a year and a half later, I actually registered right off the bat as a Republican, because I thought that the closed primaries were a nationwide law, but actually they are a law that vary from state to state. There are 14 states. Florida has them, Oklahoma has them, Pennsylvania has them, New York, I think Oregon, maybe California. Kentucky has a closed primary. I know North Carolina, South Carolina, and I think Georgia, they all have open primaries. Maryland, I think, is closed primaries. But another reason why I support closed primaries is because people have to pick a side, okay? And if you read the news come out of Florida, Republican registrations are surging. I believe it was last fall, Republicans passed Democrats as the majority voting bloc in the state for the first time ever. And then, just a couple weeks ago, a headline came out that Republicans now outnumber Democrats by 100,000 voters in Florida. Meanwhile, in Pennsylvania, people are registering Republican over Democrat by a 4-to-1 margin. But here in North Carolina, we're dazed and confused. You know, we're a very purple state. And people can still register unaffiliated to vote in a primary, and unaffiliated in general. And the unaffiliateds are the #1 voting bloc in North Carolina. And that has just happened within the last year or so. And unfortunately, the Republicans are third in the North Carolina. Second is Democrats. One is unaffiliated. Of course, third is Republicans. But if the good news is it's very evenly divided, like each classification is like around 30 to 35%. So it's like about a third of the electorate is Democrat, a third Republican, and a third unaffiliated. And there's your North Carolina political lesson for the day. So let me move on to this resolution here. A lot of the resolutions I just summarize because they get a little long, they get a little boring, but this resolution is actually very well written. Doesn't mean I support it, though. I certainly do not. But I'm going to read it to you word for word. Okay. The title is Resolution to Maintain Semi-Open Primaries While Continuing to Pursue New Republican Registrations. This is written and authored by Tina Forsberg, who is the chair of the 6th Congressional District of the North Carolina Republican Party. It says, whereas registered Republicans in the state of North Carolina already comprise the third largest political party by Democrats' unaffiliated voters, whereas unaffiliated voters make up the fastest group of registered North Carolina voters, outpacing both Republicans and Democrats, whereas in 2020, only 12% of unaffiliated voters who voted in November even bothered to vote in the March primary. Whereas of the 205,000 registered unaffiliateds who voted in the 2020 Republican primary, the vast majority of them, 171,000, modeled Republican, while only 31,000 modeled Democrat, according to GOP Data Center. And whereas since a far higher number of registered Republicans voted in the 2020 Republican primary, this is 575,000 Republicans versus 205,000 unaffiliated, it is mathematically unlikely unaffiliated voters are skewing Republican primary outcomes. Whereas media coverage is reliably dishonest, inaccurate, and seeks to divide and weaken the Republican Party, it is likely they will report a closed primary vote as an attempt by Republicans to reduce voter participation. Whereas in many counties, many conservative voters register unaffiliated and avoid primaries altogether to protect their jobs. Whereas many business owners across the state also register unaffiliated for business rather than political purposes. Whereas the greatest chance to attract Republicans back into the GOP is to win back the Supreme Court and legislative supermajorities in 2022 and win back the governor's mansion in 2024. Whereas many candidates report how critical conservative unaffiliated voters are to their success in winning with non-Republicans. Whereas unaffiliated candidates, given the ballot petition signature requirements to run for office, pose only rare threats to Republican candidates. Be it resolved, the 6th Congressional District of the North Carolina Republican Party, the Guilford County Republican Party of the North Carolina Republican Party continues to welcome the participation of unaffiliated voters in our state's semi-open primary process, as well as inviting them frequently and as a common cause of business to re-register in the Republican Party. Now, what happens next was a little bit shameful, okay? Granted, this was this was like towards the very end of the convention. This was like 12:30. The convention we'd already been sitting for 2.5 hours. But nobody wanted to go up to the front and speak in opposition of this resolution. And I thought beforehand, well, maybe I was going to give it a go and speak in opposition, and I should have. It was kind of a missed opportunity. And then when it was time to vote, of course, the room voted. It was like a unanimous vote, or I should say, the majority of people voted yay, but it was kind of a soft yay. It wasn't very enthusiastic at all. But on the other hand, nobody said nay. Or what I did was I just went to my little shy turtle shell and just didn't vote at all on this resolution. But fortunately, here's another cliffhanger for you. At the District 6 convention, this resolution comes up, and we have a very substantial debate on the issue of open versus closed primaries. So now we go back to hearing from the candidates. We have the Court of Appeals candidate Michael Stadding. He's currently a district court judge out of Mecklenburg County, and he is a member of the Air Force, and he's actually been running for this Court of Appeals seat for the last 15 months. Now we go to county commission candidates. District 7, that's the southeastern part of Guilford County. Unfortunately, it is a fairly blue part of the county too, but the Republican run for that seat is Karen Albright. She works in the real estate and paralegal fields. She says we need to stop spending on illegals. We need lower taxes, more accountability on spending, and also need eminent domain restrictions. Also need to work on reforming workers' comp insurance. Now we hear from another county commission candidate. This is the at-large seat. In other words, Alan Branson is the candidate, and he's running at-large, or layman's terms, that's county-wide. He says need to increase funding for schools. As a county commission, because he used to be on the commission from, I believe it was for 2 terms, 8 years, but he successfully lowered taxes 3 times. He's a small business owner in the trucking industry. He says, hey, how about that truck driver candidate in New Jersey who unseated a sitting entrenched Democrat who was actually, he was either the Speaker of the House or the Senate President in New Jersey. But Alan Branson, he lost his seat in 2020 by only like 75 votes. It was crazy. But the truck driver candidate in New Jersey, he only spent like $5,000, and the Democrats spent like $500,000, I think is what I heard. Then we have Kenny Abe, I believe is what Kenny Abbey, I think is what is Kenny Abel. District 7 candidate, owns a gun range, sends daughter to private school, and says it's a sacrifice for the family financially to do that, but he believes that the private school education is a lot better for his daughter than the public school education. And I don't need to go into any more detail. I'm sure you already know about all the corruption and all the just far left ideology that goes on in the public school institutions. But he says the number one accountability is to God, and that is Kenny Abel, District 7. District 2 is Steve Arnold. He previously served for 2 terms as the High Point City Council member, 1 term in the State General Assembly, and 5 terms in the County Commission. So the reason why he's running is because he wants a liberty agenda back on the table. In his 25 years as a politician, he raised taxes 0 times. Also, there should be no health mandates, no health mandates like mask and vaccines, that sort of thing. George McClellan, no, not the Civil War general. George McClellan, very, very nice guy. I've met him a couple times before. District 3. This is going to be a hotly contested race in District 3. I believe we have 3 different candidates. All 3, I would say, are very good. And gosh, I don't live in that district, but if I did, I have a very tough decision to make. George McClellan served 10 years on the Oak Ridge Town Council and raised taxes 0 times and reduced taxes 1 time, actually. Supports first responders, law enforcement, firefighters, actually supports a pay raise for police officers. He says he does support increased spending on the county public schools, but he says the money must follow the child, and the money should not be spent for new administrative buildings or offices. The money must, for students, for the classrooms, right? Then we have Dan Souter in District 3. He's running on a freedom and advocacy platform. He has experience working as a business project manager, and he has worked with people of all types in this the project management field. Pat Tillman, District 3, former Marine. Family, work, and leadership are his big themes. Former member of school board, and he fought and successfully kept the Little League, the baseball, softball, kept the Oak Ridge chapter of the Little League up and running in Oak Ridge. Now we'll go to the sheriff's candidates. Phil Bird served as a captain in the Guilford County Sheriff's Office, 30 years of experience. He says a failure in policy has cost taxpayers oodles of money. Also, he says there have been lawsuits from poor management of the jail facilities. And then we have a guy by the last name of Melvin for sheriff. He says, calling parents as domestic terrorists, and also the looting and the rioting, Mr. Melvin decided to come off the couch and run for county sheriff. Adam Moore has spent 8 years in law enforcement. Says we see the problem in politics and fortunately look the other way. He understands why people are leaving the Guilford County Sheriff's Department. And he grew up in Oak Ridge, and at the age of 9, he was pulling tobacco up from the fields in Oak Ridge, or northwest Guilford County. Then we hear from Randy Powers. State Senator John Faircloth was his father's partner in the High Point Police Department. John Faircloth, former chief of police in High Point, and helped lead a charge to break up motorcycle gangs in Guilford County. And Randy Powers says that it was featured on 48 Hours back in the 90s. I'm going to have to look for that, because I really like watching the old school 48 Hours. No, not the 48 Hours mystery crap that you see all over, 100 other shows on true crime. No. 48 Hours used to be a news magazine where they would focus on a variety of topics. One, they went to the Grand Canyon, and the point of 48 Hours was to look at a topic over 48 hours, like go to the Grand Canyon, visit it for 48 hours. One was on traffic in Manhattan, one was on Christmas shopping, but the theme song, do yourself a favor, when we're done watching this, go on YouTube, right, and look up like 48 Hours from 1990 or 1992 or early 90s. Okay, look up the theme song. The theme music is just so good. It draws you in, right? That's, because back in the old days, kids, we used to have theme songs that would draw you into watching the show. And then watch a story at the very end. Make sure you stick around for the closing credits, because the closing credit music is just as good as the opening theme music. I'm Dan Rather, and that's 48 Hours. Dun, 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 dun. Anyway, this breaking up the motorcycle gangs for Randy Powers made the this Department of Motor Vehicle Police Enforcement one of the best ones in the nation at that time. Then we hear from Billy Queen, sheriff candidate. He was served in the Vietnam. He's a Vietnam veteran in the Army. Spoke to 1,000 policemen in Atlantic City. Acknowledged John Faircloth, Stephanie Mitchell, and her courageous leadership on the school board. William White, a former Marine, has a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and is going to earn a doctorate in public administration this summer. Let's see. We lived it for 2 years as far as constitutional rights being taken away because of this pandemic. And the sheriff, Danny Rogers, Democrat, stayed quiet. He says, let's get this right, vote for white. Then we hear from Court of Appeals candidate Julie Flood, no primary, but she's been running for the last 15 months. Says we can get 3 seats in the legislature for a supermajority, 4 seats on Court of Appeals for a supermajority, 2 seats on Supreme Court for a majority, 1 U.S. Senate seat, and says she hears 900 cases a year. Okay, written thousands of opinions and has been vetted by Paul Newby. Okay, then we have a remark from David Gleason who says, okay, folks, getting late. Brevity is very important here. He said that a couple other times, too. You're interfering with Lee Haywood's cocktail hour. Ha ha ha. Donna Stroud, incumbent, running for another term on the State Court of Appeals, says she's Chief Justice of the Court of Appeals. This position, she was the first Republican Chief Justice on the Court of Appeals. And this seat was actually created back in 1967. She won it back in 2006 as the first Republican to do so. Was reelected in 2014, and the judicial seats are always 8-year terms. She's from Kinston. We have 15 judges. 4 are up for reelection on the Court of Appeals. Also been endorsed by John Tyson, another incumbent that's running on the Court of Appeals, and also endorsed by Barbara Jackson. She wanted everybody to know to be proud to vote for Stroud. And then we have a final credentials issue. Says that there are actually 130 delegates at the county convention. Jeff Phillips had a waiver to skip the precinct meeting, but attend the convention. So he is eligible for delegate for the county convention. So that so the final total for delegates at the convention was 130 delegates. And finally, we dismissed at 12:46 p.m. a 2-hour and 46-minute convention, one of the longest ones in Guilford County history, but not as long as some other counties like Craven and Cabarrus. But there you have it. Yes. Finally, I did it. The 2022 coverage of the Guilford County Convention is now in the books. I'm Dan Rather, and this has been 48 hours. Doo-doo-doo.